Once upon a time, in a little village in India, there lived two families. In the rich family, there was the mother, a son and a daughter, and in the poor family, there was the mother and two daughters. In the house of the poor family, the mother worked non-stop, but there was rarely enough to eat, and her daughters worried about her. Now, the youngest sister had a special gift. She could shape change. She could change into a flowering tree. And she had only ever told her older sister about this. Now, one day they had a little chat, and they decided to change into the tree. So the older sister went and she got 2 jars of fresh clean water, and she poured the first jar over her little sister, and she turned into a beautiful flowering tree with lots of gorgeous exotic blue flowers. The big sister very carefully picked all these blue flowers, being very careful not to break any twigs or leaves or anything else. And then she poured the second jar over her, and she turned back into her human form. They went to the market, and everyone was like looking and smelling the flowers. But who should come along but the mother from the rich household, and she bought all the flowers. Now, when she got home, her son was absolutely obsessed with the flowers. They just smelled so beautiful. And he kept thinking, well, where did they come from? What tree did they come from? And that night he couldn't sleep a wink thinking about it. And he thought, tomorrow when I get up, I'm going to go to the market. And when he did, he discovered that the 2 sisters were already there. They had repeated the operation. He bought all the flowers. So the sisters walked home, and he followed behind them. Shh. So he could see where they lived. And he sneaked into the garden and hid behind a bush, and he waited and waited, but he was so tired from not sleeping the night before that he fell fast asleep. And when he woke up, it was early morning, and there were the 2 sisters in the garden. The older sister poured the water over the little sister, and she turned into a flowering tree before his eyes. He couldn't believe it. Then she poured another jug of water over her, and there she was, a beautiful woman again. Well, he decided in that very moment this was the woman that he wanted to marry. So he asked her, and she seemed a bit surprised, but she said, okay. And at that time in India, they had to ask the parents for permission. Luckily, both parents said yes. So time went by really, really quickly because they were preparing for the wedding. And after the wedding, there they were on their wedding night, just the 2 of them in each other's arms. And he said, could I ask you a favour? Okay then, but what's the favour? Could you turn into a flowering tree? But how did you know that? I've never told anyone apart from my sister. He confessed everything. Listen, okay, it's possible, but under these conditions, the water must be fresh and clean, and you must be very, very careful only to pick the flowers. Never pick any leaves, and don't break any twigs or anything else. And he promised. So he got some water, he poured it over her, and she turned into a beautiful flowering tree. he was so excited. He started to pick the flowers and he was like really enthusiastic, and he didn't realise that he was also picking leaves and breaking some twigs, and he just didn't realise. And he picked up the second jar of water and he poured it over her, and there she was yet again as a woman, but oh no, she had no hands, no feet, and she couldn't talk. He panicked. He ran and he ran deep into the forest. No one knows how long he spent in the forest of life. They say that his beard grew to the ground. But at some point, he got his courage back, and he knew that he had to go back there and face up to his wife and ask for her forgiveness. So he did. He went all the way back to the village. In the garden, he found the sister. He explained everything. She listened carefully. She could see the sadness in his eyes. She could see that he had a good heart. She could see that his hands were trembling. And she said, "Okay, I'll take you to my sister. But first let me get some water." And off she went. She took him into the house, and his wife was in a corner. She looked exactly the same, as if time hadn't passed. He poured the jar of water over her, looking into her eyes, and immediately she turned into a beautiful flowering tree. He looked very carefully at the tree, trying to see where things were missing, and using the resin of the tree, he started to stick the little bits together. The twigs, the leaves, very carefully and very patiently. And when finally he was satisfied that everything was in its place, he poured the second jug over her. And there she was, in front of his eyes, his wife, beautiful, complete wife. He knelt down on his knees, he asked for her forgiveness, and he kissed her on the eyes. And they both gave each other a big, infinite hug.